Kentucky's been doing some really interesting things with their rotation, and I think it's pretty clear that Zvonimir Ivisic just needs to play more.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for various SEC-related things, but on this podcast, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing the status of Zvonimir Ivisic. Obviously been a popular topic on this show, but we're going to talk about it in a more positive light today. I think he needs more touches and he needs more minutes with the Wildcats. Also on today's episode, going to take a look at the latest bracketology projections. Not just CBS and ESPN got a whole list of different projections to dive into today. And then finally, we're going to wrap up the show by talking about how Kentucky closes out the season. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you are watching on YouTube, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. If you're listening on podcast, I would also greatly appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. I believe that Zvonimir Ivisic should be getting more touches for the Kentucky Wildcats, just plain and simple. You look at his numbers overall so far this season: 5.5 points, 3 rebounds, less than half an assist per game, and 54.1% from the field. That is what he is shooting this season. He's also getting 1.4 blocks per game. And over these past couple of games, he has played a significant amount, at least relative to what he has been getting so far this season. In his college debut, Ivisic got 16 minutes and was 5 of 7 from the floor, had 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks, 2 steals, 13 points overall. And then in his second game, he had 10 minutes and was 1 of 3 from the floor, significantly less effective. And then against Arkansas, he played 2 minutes, Florida 6 minutes, Vanderbilt 12 minutes, Gonzaga 11 minutes. And when he has gotten double-digit minutes so far this season, only one time has he failed to score at least 10 points, and that was against Gonzaga. He had 11 minutes, had 7 points, 3 rebounds, a block, and kind of struggled on defense against the Bulldogs' big men. But I think that it's really important to focus on the highlights whenever he has gotten more opportunities. And again, I want to reiterate, over these past 2 games, he's gotten a lot of chances to really show what he's capable of. And I think that we should stop focusing less on what Ivisic does on a game-by-game basis. And if he's able to play a significant amount for the rest of the season, however many games Kentucky's got left, I think that it's going to be important to kind of judge him on the entire product. Because sometimes you'll get performances like he had against Alabama, a team that does not have a true big man. They've got some interesting height. They've got some fun personnel, but they don't have that star-studded center. And Ivisic in 20 minutes was 7 of 11 from the floor, had 5 rebounds, 4 blocks, and 18 points total. Against Mississippi State, though, you saw things slow down significantly against the likes of Tolu Smith, Cam Matthews, DJ Jeffries, etc. Just 1 of 5 from the floor. Of course, 0 of 3 from downtown. You would expect that clip to be more consistent, but just 2 points, 4 rebounds, 3 blocks, and a steal still, though. So he's making an impact. He also had a plus-minus of plus 22 despite going 1 of 5 from the floor in 21 minutes of play. So you see here, when Ivisic gets those minutes, when he gets the touches, you're seeing him produce in one way or another. And I understand that the defense has not been that consistent. And we've said on the show here, maybe you need to adjust the expectations for him in his playing time until he can kind of develop if he comes back next season, which sounds unlikely. or just kind of limit what he's able to do if he's going to struggle this much on defense. And when he's gotten more playing time over these last 2 games, it's really not been that bad. And if you're getting 4 to 3 blocks a game while getting 20 minutes of play, I would say throw him out there, especially considering he has the chance, depending on the matchup, night in and night out, to score something like 18 points. Also, when he's not scoring, he still has a chance to make an impact at 7'2", 235 pounds. I think Zvonimir Ivisic deserves more playing time. I think that he needs more touches, and I understand that there are a lot of different players in this front court that are doing some good things for Kentucky. Ugonna Onyenso now asserted himself as the starting center in this lineup. He is able to bring you some blocks. He's able to bring you some defense on occasion. But again, we see these different forwards and centers for Kentucky struggle against more physical, more overpowering teams. The prime example being what happened against Mississippi State last night. Onyenso really struggled. I believe he had a plus-minus of like -21, if I'm not mistaken. Ivisic, +22. So you think about the different matchups that Kentucky's going to have here to kind of round out the season. Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, teams that are going to fight and claw their way, despite maybe some of them not having as much talent as some of these other teams. You're going to need to throw out different guys, not just Onyenso, and not just Aaron Bradshaw, who has also done good things for Kentucky at times this season. Zvonimir needs his touches. He needs his minutes. I think he needs to get more playing time because of the upside. You're not going to unlock consistency without consistently putting Ivisic out on the floor. It's just not going to happen. So instead of, again, looking at this at a game-by-game basis, let's give him some run to close out the season against the Razorbacks, the Commodores, and the Vols. Give him 20 minutes, see what he does, and then evaluate it heading into the SEC tournament. Do things need to change? Do they need to stay the same? Do they need to maybe churn in Ivisic's favor and give him even more minutes? I don't know. All I know is that he needs more touches and he needs more opportunities right now because he has such a high upside and such potential for this team this season. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Should Ivisic play more? Should he play less? What should Kentucky do with their center and their front court? You can leave all of that in the YouTube comments below if you're listening there, or if you're listening on podcast at Locked On UK on Twitter. All right, so we've got some bracketology updates. Got a lot to talk about there. Kentucky moving up in interesting spots. Going to dive into all of that in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, you want to go to the Arkansas game this weekend. I think it's going to be a fun contest. I think Kentucky and Rupp will make this game interesting, but yet win, probably close this thing out strong against the Razorbacks. Let's say you want to see a fun game. You want to see Ivisic play before the end of the regular season. You need to head over to Game Time because they have the perfect spot for all of the tickets that you would ever want to buy, not just for sporting events, but for music events, comedy, and theater near you. Again, it's the perfect place to buy any ticket for any event that you want. It's super fast and super easy. And right now, new customers get $100 off when they buy a big game ticket with code VEGAS100. Again, Game Time's got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and then their Game Time guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It is an excellent app. I used it a lot this past college football season to go to various venues. Perfect views from your seat, great prices. Again, all the way up to even an hour after the game starts, you can get tickets on Game Time. Excellent, excellent stuff. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Again, right now, all Game Time users get $100 off a big game ticket with code VEGAS100. Terms apply, so you need to download the Game Time app. Use code VEGAS100 for $100 off a big game ticket. Or if you're not going to the game, you can use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, continuing along here on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you checking out the show today. Again, if you have not subscribed on YouTube or on the podcast feed, wherever you are tuned in, please sub up to the show. I would greatly appreciate it. We're closing in on 7,500 subscribers on the YouTube page, which is just insane to think about this time a year ago, where we were at, where we're at now. Thank you so much for joining up. Thank you so much for joining the community here. A lot of great commenters coming in and out consistently. Love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you are new. Okay, so we got some bracketology updates I want to kind of dive into here. So right now, Kentucky 20-8, 10-5 in the SEC. Several different outlets are starting to come alive here as we are just less than 48 hours away from the start of March. So not just ESPN, but also CBS and a variety of other outlets are starting to kind of gear up for what should be a really interesting NCAA tournament. Kentucky, according to Joe Lunardi on ESPN, as of right now, is a 5 seed. Now, ESPN did put this latest bracketology out before Kentucky played Mississippi State, and then they said on the broadcast of the Kentucky-Mississippi State game, if the Wildcats did win, they would have the opportunity to move up to the 4 seed line. So just looking around here at the bracketology for ESPN, Wisconsin, Washington State, Clemson are the other 5 seeds, Auburn, Baylor, take a look here, San Diego State, and Illinois are the 4 seeds. My only assumption is that it would be SDSU that would be pushed off of that 4 seed line in favor of the Wildcats there. That's just my guess because Baylor got a big win. Auburn is still winning. Illinois won recently a big game, and I think SDSU actually lost a game recently that might have hurt them. So it'd be the Wildcats that'd be moving up to that 4 seed line. And you're looking at the 12 seed matchups right now, and if Kentucky ends up being that 5 seed, I'm not particularly scared of a Richmond, a Grand Canyon, a Samford, but I am terrified of a McNeese State. That game would really scare me. They have really good guards. They play with some interesting pace. That would be a difficult matchup, I think, for Kentucky out of the gate. Obviously, any team can lose any game. We've seen that over the past half decade in this tournament. But at the 5 or the 4 seed, I think Kentucky's got some opportunities to make a run. They made their run, if I'm not mistaken, as a 4 just a decade or so ago. So that's ESPN. Jerry Palm of CBS Sports put out bracketology today, February 28th, and he has Kentucky moving up from a 6 seed to a 5 seed. Finally, Jerry Palm is starting to favor the Kentucky Wildcats, and a lot of it has to do with their quad 1 opportunities, and we'll get to that later on in the show. But as of right now, Kentucky a 5 seed, Wisconsin, Utah State, and Clemson also 5 seeds. You want to take a look at the 4 seed line as well. Auburn, Duke, Illinois, and Creighton are there on the 5 seed line. San Diego State, and this is kind of funny to me. San Diego State is the best 3 seed according to Jerry Palm, and according to Joe Lunardi, San Diego State is this close to being pushed down to a 5 seed. I just find that entertaining. So Kentucky, according to Mr. Palm, is the second best 5 seed. 6-6 quad 1 record, 2-1 quad 2, 3-1 quad 3 with that loss to UNC Wilmington, and 6-0 in the quad 4, ranked number 19 in the net. This weekend, you don't want to lose to Arkansas, obviously, because of how badly it would damage your resume here if you were to lose to a lower-rated opponent. But Kentucky, man, if they're able to close out this season, if they're able to close it out strong, win all 3 of these final games, finish 23-8, which that Tennessee game, that's gonna be really, really tough. It's gonna be very difficult. But if they can win all 3 of those games, 23-8, you're starting to put yourself in a really good position to maybe make a significant push in these bracketology projections, like climb to a possible 3 seed. So last year, whenever we started talking about bracketology, when March got here, I pulled up a website that I think is very fun called bracketmatrix.com. And Bracket Matrix they list every single bracketology projection out there on the internet. at least the like significant ones. And if I'm not mistaken, there's like close to 100 here. It may be over 100 different bracket projections, but it takes all of them, and it gives the average seed number. I'm sorry, there are 115 brackets here. Holy cow. And it gives the average seed number and then shows you where that individual team is ranked in every single bracketology. Kentucky, according to the internet, is a 5 seed. Average seed of 5.04. There are a few different places out there that have Kentucky already on a 4 seed line. It's funny because some of these links that you go to are literally just Google Sheets that people are updating with different analytics. Some of them are professional websites like CBS or ESPN or Fox. But yeah, Kentucky, for the most part, almost across the board, is a 5 seed. And you see a couple of 6s sprinkled in here. You see a couple of 4s sprinkled in here as well. But again, if you make a push at the end of this season, if you win these games, and you win some in the SEC tournament as well, you're going to have a chance to climb. So let's talk about those games. Let's take a look at what Kentucky's working with right now and kind of project out how things are going to end. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. You can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. And you can bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live games, same parlays, exclusive props, and more. Tons of Kentucky Wildcats to place a prop down on in the NBA right now. And you should go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot on Kentucky or any NBA prop or bet you please. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon to shoot your shot. That is FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, wrapping up the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Again, appreciate you guys checking out the show today. So we've got some thoughts here about Kentucky basketball and how they may close out the season. So I mentioned Bracket Matrix, I mentioned KenPom, I mentioned CBS, I mentioned ESPN, I mentioned all these different websites that you can go to and you can check out, different stuff. Still fighting that cough, by the way. It has been a weird congestion for about half a week now. So there's another website that I've talked about before that I absolutely love, and it's called barttorvik.com. Now, that may sound kind of funny just on the surface. Most people call it Torvik, but they have all these different analytics that you can check out. It's similar to KenPom, but they have this cool thing called Teamcast, where you can go to an individual team and you can look at their schedule. You can look at their wins and losses. You can look at their final few games that they've not played, and you can see what their projected win-loss is for those final few games. But what you can do is you can look at those games and project how the season's going to go, where they're going to rank in terms of seed line if they win or lose some specific games. So, to wrap up the show here, let's look at these final few games for Kentucky. Let's just speculate for a second. So Kentucky has 3 more games, like I mentioned earlier. Arkansas at home, ranked number 121 in KenPom. Vanderbilt at home, ranked number 193 in KenPom. And then Tennessee on the road to wrap up the regular season, number 6 in the KenPom ratings. Kentucky has a 91% chance to beat Arkansas, according to KP, a 96% chance to beat Vanderbilt, and only a 24% chance to beat the Tennessee Volunteers on the road. So let's go with that. Let's go over to Torvik and let's see what would happen if Kentucky wins against Arkansas, wins against Vanderbilt, loses to Tennessee, and then wins the games that they should in the SEC tournament, depending on where everybody's seated. So Torvik takes that into account, by the way. It projects out when doing these simulations. It will go and see which teams are favored in the SEC and other matchups, and then it will finish out the conference standings and then have a bracket and then run the SEC tournament. So Kentucky would be slated to play Vanderbilt first game, South Carolina the second game. After beating the Commodores, they would beat the Gamecocks, according to Torvik, and then they would lose to Tennessee in the SEC tournament. So let's go ahead and hit submit here and see where Kentucky would land on their seed line. They would finish the season 24-10, according to this website, and they would be a 4 seed, according to the team cast here on Torvik. They would be the third best 4 seed. Okay, so now that we know that that is where Kentucky would land, if everything went according to plan, let's switch it up here. Let's talk best case scenario to close things out. Let's say they beat Tennessee. Let's say they beat, what would now be Arkansas in their first game. Let's say they beat South Carolina. And then let's say they beat Tennessee to win the SEC tournament. We'll hit submit. Kentucky would end the season 26-8, and they would be, brace yourself, they'd be a 2 seed. They'd be the lowest rated 2 seed. Tennessee, Marquette, North Carolina, Kentucky. Which feels like it's out of reach. It feels like it's out of the question. And to be fair, it probably is, because of the fact that I don't think the selection committee is going to line up perfectly with Torvik. But it's going to be pretty dang close. Kentucky's going to be on the 3 seed line comfortably in this scenario. So let's say Kentucky loses to Tennessee to end the regular season, and they win the SEC tournament. They just win all of their games. According to Torvik, Kentucky would be a 3 seed. They would be the 4th best 3 seed. So that win against Tennessee at the very end of the regular season is really important. To do that on the road instead of a neutral site. So let's swap the Tennessee games here. Let's say Kentucky wins at Tennessee to end the regular season, but loses to Tennessee in the SEC title game. Kentucky would be the 3rd best 3 seed. So that game against Tennessee on the road in Knoxville to end the regular season is going to be very important for the Wildcats. And they don't have a great shot to win it, according to analytics. And just based on personnel and based on what we saw in that first game in Rupp, yeah, Kentucky's probably going to struggle. Probably. But if they don't, and they do end the regular season winning out, and they finish the year like 26-8, 25-8, something like that, Kentucky's got a shot at a really high 3 seed, and in probably fantasy land, they've got a shot at a 2 seed. They got a very small shot at a 2 seed. Kentucky's still in that, man. Kentucky is still in the running for it. So let me know what you think in the comments below, how you think the season's going to finish, if you think Kentucky will get there, if they can, where you would like to see them in the tournament in terms of seeding. You can leave all of that in the comments below. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless.